It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Algeria. Part 2, the selection. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin, and this is a continuation of Series 31 on the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is part 2 of our coverage of Algeria's players. The final roster is released, and we are looking at the selections of Algeria. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation from after the 2023 African Cup. That took place in January 2024, up until the October 2025 games, or the end of World Cup qualifying. We considered a few other factors as well, and we also gave some biographical / career information on the main players to help you to get to know them better. In part 2 here, our focus is on the selections, especially the final selections. Before we move on, we want to let you know that in the springtime of 2026, probably April, we will start producing episodes for the 2026 World Cup, which of course takes place in the summer. Keep an eye out for that, or better yet, subscribe to the channel and it'll notify you when the episodes come out. The mediacast here is divided into 3 sections. In section 1, just like in part 1, section 1 is dedicated to team information. That'll be shorter than that section in part 1. Section 2 here is the main part of the mediacast. We're going to review the list that we compiled in part 1. We'll tell you who made the preliminary and final squad. We'll also try to predict the starters. We actually took steps towards that in part 1 by providing a narrative of each position over the period. We'll summarize that by letting you know who we think the starters, or who we thought the starters would be at the end of part 1. We didn't talk about that actually, but we did make notes on it. It wasn't our focus there, but it is here. Then we will examine the lineups in the games played after October 2025 to see if they shine any more light on who will start. And finally, we'll make our predictions on the starters. So that is section 2. In section 3, it is summaries, but important summaries. We're going to start with a spotlight review. That's a quick run through the main players who made it and who didn't make the squad and our predicted starters. We'll also review surprise selections and non-selections, as well as new players making the final squad. And finally, we'll update on injuries, which was a big section for Algeria, so a lot to talk about there. Okay, let us jump right in to section 1, some information on the team. And in part 1, we looked at club affiliations of players, the games they played over the recent period, and their preferred formations. Here we're focusing on what the teams published. Teams were required to submit a preliminary roster of up to 55 players to CAF, that the organizers of the tournament there, kind of Africa's version of FIFA. For the 2023 African Cup, CAF published those lists, so that was nice and easy. Some teams didn't like it, though. They felt it had some negative effects. So this time it was up to the teams as to whether they published or not. I used Google's AI to get the 55-man roster. But in the process of doing so, and I must say, especially for the smaller teams, I became a bit doubtful about its sourcing and accuracy. However, as I said, that was really just a few of the finer details there. And overall, I think the rosters are quite accurate. At the risk of a few mistakes, we're going to use the information I got from AI there. The final rosters, on the other hand, are very accurate. So teams were allowed to bring 28 players to the tournament. Algeria did, and so that those players came from the 55-man preliminary roster, meaning that they would have to cut 27 players off of that provisional roster. Okay, before we move on to section 2 and see who those players were, let's take a look at the games played after October 2025. Algeria was quite busy. In addition to 2 friendlies that most teams played in November, Algeria also played in the Arab Cup. And I'll talk about kind of the crossover between the Arab Cup team and this team for the African Cup. Okay, let's begin then with the 2 friendlies in November. The first one was on November 13th in Saudi Arabia, Algeria playing Zimbabwe, and they won that game. Actually, the next game also in Saudi Arabia was against Saudi Arabia themselves on November 18th, and they won that game as well. 2-0. So that was good going into the Arab Cup there. Again, we're not really interested in the results, but more in the lineups. In the Arab Cup, they played 4 games, so they got through the group stage with wins over Bahrain and Iraq. In the first game, a bit disappointingly, they tied Sudan. That got them to the quarterfinals where they played the UAE, and well, my graphic is wrong here. It couldn't have been 2-0. Anyway, it was a draw and went to penalties, and UAE won 7-6 on penalties there. So I'll just have to put XX because I'm not sure if it was 2-2 or 0-0 at the end of regulation time. Again, I defend myself by saying we don't really care about the scores here, but the personnel. So let me tell you, in Algeria's case, there was some crossover. Some teams just used a B team, and there really was a bit of a firewall between the Arab Cup team and the African Cup team. Not so in the case of Algeria. There seems to have been a firewall just with one player, really. Where it was really clear that he was dedicated to the Arab Cup and not the African Cup. But there were a few players who played both, and we'll point them out as we go through section 2. There were a few players who seemed to maybe make the African Cup team because they performed well in the tournament. And then there were a lot of players who were dedicated to the African Cup, but not the Arab Cup. So again, to detail them here would be a bit too much, but we will mention as we go through section 2. Okay, that is it. So yes, the lineups for the Arab Cup are kind of of passing interest to us. We're just really interested in the players who are being called up to the African Cup. Okay, that is it for section 1. Let's move on to section 2. Our main order of business here, and we're looking at the candidates. When we did the manager in part 1, we used the opportunity to talk about the team over the past 4 or 5 years, as well as the manager's role in that, basically the team and the manager's success. In the case of Algeria, a lot of that was about the previous manager, Jamal Belmadi. Jamal Belmadi. But during the period under study, he was out. Actually, he parted with Algeria after the last African Cup there. In 2024, in January of 2024. So our current manager, Vladimir Petkovic, came in February of 2024. And we won't go through all the details again, but what we will do is consider him a successful selection for the squad there. So Vladimir Petkovic leading them through the tournament. Let's go to goalkeepers. And we had a definite candidate in Alexis Guendouzi. We start right away with a surprise because he only made the preliminary squad there, but that was due to injury, so no kind of dramatic non-selections, although we do have a couple of those coming up. Our likely candidate was Oussama Ben Bout, and he was selected for the final squad. We had four candidates at the possible level on the list here. The first one, Anthony Mandrea, the starter in the previous African Cup, was selected for the squad. The second one, Alexander Ukija, was not selected even for the preliminary squad. That is due to injury, and we'll detail that in section 3. Next one, Luka Zidane. Was selected for the squad. He, of course, the son of French great Zinedine Zidane, has given his allegiance to Algeria and will play for Algeria, or at least be on the roster for Algeria for this cup. And the fourth possible candidate, Zakaria Bouhafea, not even making the preliminary squad. We also had two players off the squad, both of them having been in tournaments. Actually, the first one, kind of its historical name for Algeria, Raisem Boli. He was not selected even for the preliminary squad, and nor would, sorry, my mistake, Mustafa Zegba, who had been a backup keeper in the last two African Cups there, did at least make the preliminary squad. We do have one new candidate to add, who was added to the preliminary list, and that is Teddy Bulhendi. Teddy Bulhendi, just 24 years old, actually made the list for the previous Cup too, but didn't make the final cut, neither there nor here. So those are our candidates. So the successful ones, Oussama Ben Bout, Anthony Mandrea, and Luka Zidane. Let's go to predictions and see what we thought at the end of part 1. Well, we thought that Alexis Guendouzi would be the likely starter there, and we thought Anthony Mandrea would be the backup. So yeah, we'll tell you a little bit about summarize the history over the period. Alex Guendouzi took over the starting spot from Anthony Mandrea basically in 2025. However, he only started about 2/3 of the games. That's why we have him as likely rather than definite. However, it was various players replacing him in those games, so we're not that clear on who the backup keeper would be. In the November games, Alex Guendouzi again didn't start the first game. Oussama Ben Bout got the nod for that game. Guendouzi did start the second game, however. His injury came after that second game on November 18th, and now he is out injured. So it remains to be seen whether Anthony Mandrea will resume his starting position, or whether the first friendly indicates that Ben Bout is ahead of him in the pecking order. So we're going to revise our prediction. Of course, we have to with Guendouzi out, but we're not sure who it's going to be. So we're going to say Anthony Mandrea and Oussama Ben Bout as possible candidates. We're going to put stars beside their name to indicate how likely we think they are to be starter. Just one star is at the possible level. We'll use 2 for likely and 3 for definite. Here we just give 1 star to Ben Bout and 1 star to Anthony Mandrea. Okay, let's go to defense and look at the central defenders here. So we had 2 definite candidates. The first one, Issa Mandi. He was selected for the squad. And the second one, Rami Ben Sabeni, also selected, actually overcoming injury for that, which we'll talk about in section 3. Our likely candidate, Mohamed Amin Tougai, also selected, also overcoming an injury concern. And here too, we have 4 possible candidates. The first one, Mohamed Amin Madani, not selected even for the preliminary squad there. The second one, Zinedine Belaid, was selected for the final squad. Ahmed Touba, the third one, just making the preliminary squad. And the fourth one, Also overcoming injury, Samir Churgui, also selected for the preliminary squad. So they had a lot of concerns back here, as you might guess, a lot of injury concerns, but they seem to have worked out okay. We had a player at the seemingly off the squad level, Ayub Abdelawi, and he was not selected even for the preliminary squad. And then we have one new player to add. He was on the preliminary squad. It is Abdel Medioub. He just made the preliminary squad there. And when we say new player, that means that they weren't on our list in part one. And the reason they weren't on our list would have been that they haven't appeared over the past 2 years or in 2024 or 2025. So he actually has been around for a while, Medioub, but didn't make our list in part one. Okay, now we can go and look at the predictions. What did we think at the end of part one? We had Isa Mandi as a definite starter. We're going to say a definite starter on the field. He did play 3 games as a right back, so there's a small possibility of him starting there. But we have him at the definite level. Likely starters, Rami Bentabeni and Muhammad Amin Tugay. So we're pretty confident here that those 3 main players would be the ones. And let's take a look and see if the November games change our opinion on that. Bentabeni and Tugay were actually both out injured for the November friendly, so that's going to create a bit of confusion for us here. It was a 3-man central defence in the first November friendly. Zinedine Belaid was in the centre. He was flanked on the left side by the left back Jaoun Hajam, who we'll meet shortly, and on the right side it was Samir Churgui playing there. Belaid also started the second game, and he was alongside Isa Mandi, this a 2-man defence. But Samir Churgui was on the field playing as a right back there. So where does this leave us in our predictions? Well, we think Isa Mandi will still be a definite starter. Once again, a small chance of starting as a right back there. So we're going to put 3 stars beside him. We think, honestly, it could be any one or any 2 of them playing. So we're not really sure. We're just going to put a star beside each of them. We think Sami Churgui seems to be a player they want to have on the field. So we're not sure. Usually we don't put a possible beside 4 different players. The other thing too is Bentabeni could potentially be on the field as a left back, and Samir Churgui could be on the field as a right back, or Churgui and Mandi. So there is a possibility that 3 of these players could be on the field together. That makes me a little less guilty about putting 4 stars. But again, those November games with Bentabeni and Tugay out injured made it a bit difficult to predict here. Let's move on to the left back position. And we have as a not a definite candidate, but a likely candidate, Ryan Aït-Nouri. He also was an injury concern. And there are other reasons why we had him as a likely candidate that we covered in part 1. Anyway, he was selected for the final squad. And then we have Jaoun Hajam, who we just met there, and he also was selected for the squad. He had been a likely candidate. Our possible candidate, Mehdi Dorval, also made the squad here. But unlikely candidate Naoufel Kassaf, not even selected for the preliminary squad, and nor was Yasser Larouchi, also not named to the preliminary squad. We do have a new candidate here. It's Yusuf Laouafi. and he just made the preliminary squad there. So three left backs here, so maybe the central defenders won't be needed over here. And let's take a look at what we think. Well, even though we had Ryan Aitnori as a likely candidate, we have him as a definite starter over here. And we consider Zhao and Hajam a backup player rather than a possible starter there. So we'll put the 3 stars beside Ryan Aitnori, putting all of our chips behind him. Let's move on to the right back position. Again, no definite candidate here, but we do have a likely candidate in Yusuf Attal. And Yusuf Attal was selected for the squad. We have 3 candidates at the possible level. The first one, Kevin Guitoun, also known as Kevin Vanden Kirkhoff, only made the preliminary squad there. Again, injury had been hanging over him. And the next player, Mohamed Farsi, we'll talk about both of those injury concerns in what will be a busy section 3 for injuries. So those 2 just making the preliminary squad. But our third candidate here, Rafik Belgali, did make the final squad there. And we have no new candidates over here. So Yusuf Attal and Rafik Belgali, the successful candidates here. Let's go to predictions. And we thought at the end of part 1 that Yusuf Attal would be a likely starter and Rafik Belgali a possible starter. We have kind of the general feeling that they're not completely satisfied with Yusuf Attal. He does seem to be the main starter, but he only started 7 of the 18 games over the period. They always seemed a bit anxious to find another player for this position, whether as a backup or a starter. And they went through several players. We saw that central defender Isa Manda started 3 games over there, and several players started single games as well. In October, they landed upon the newcomer Rafik Belgali to replace Attal, who was once again injured. Attal was available in November, but was not called up to the squad. So it was Rafik Belgali starting the first game. And then, as we saw, central defender Samir Churgui starting the second game as a right back. So this position is in a bit of flux, and we are going to put a single star. We're going to move Yusuf Attal down from likely to possible. We're also going to give Rafik Belgali a possible. And then we're also going to say one of the central defenders will be possible. So I'm just going to write that in here as a possible start. And that could be Churgui or Isamandi there. All right, before we move on to the midfield, I just want to take this opportunity to go back and look at players who were involved in the Arab Cup there. So we're going to go back to goalkeepers. We had a long list of goalkeepers, but none of our starters, indeed, none of the players on our list for goalkeepers were involved in the Arab Cup there. For defenders, our central defender, Mohamed Amin Tugai, was selected both for the Arab Cup and for this. The manager talked about something about special skills. They had specialty skills or something. He gave that as his reason. Anyway, Tugai, I believe he just started one of the 4 games in the African Cup there. And that was all for central defenders. For left backs, none of them were involved. Hang on. Except, yes, our possible but unlikely candidate, Naufel Kasef, was involved in the African Cup. He hadn't been selected for the even for the preliminary squad there. So perhaps he was earmarked for the African Cup there. And among the right backs, Yusuf Attal, who also made the African Cup, also part of the Arab Cup squad, and I believe he started 2 games. Otherwise, none of the players on our list, even the ones just making the preliminary squad, were selected for the Arab Cup there. Okay, now we can move on to the midfield, and we begin with defensive midfielders. And lo and behold, there are none. That was a bit of a surprise in part 1. No players coded as defensive midfielders. However, we do have one to add to our list, and actually it is a player selected for the Arab Cup. So Victor Lecal, just making the preliminary squad for the African Cup here, but selected for the Arab Cup there. Okay, let's move on to central midfielders. And here we had no candidates at the definite level. So that tells you something. Usually when we have no definite candidates, it means a bit of chaos in selection in the position. And that is the case here. But let's look at the candidates. Our likely candidate, Nabil Bentaleb, not selected for the squad. That was a bit of a surprise. He actually had overcome cardiac arrest in June 2024, but that seemed to have nothing to do with his non-selection. He had gotten himself back to fitness, and well, he's a likely candidate here, so he was in with the national team here. The decision was just a strategy decision by the manager. He was disappointed by the non-selection. And yes, he had been a likely candidate, so it's a bit of a surprise to us too. But Nabil Bentaleb, just on the preliminary squad there. We had 5 possible candidates. Again, another indication of selection chaos. The first one, Ramiz Zerouki, was selected for the squad. Husam Awar is the second one. He was selected for the squad, but ended up being replaced there. So he was withdrawn from the squad due to injury. We'll talk about that in section 3 as well. The third one, Adam Zorgain, was selected, and so was the fourth one, Ismail Benasser. And the last one, Ahmed Kendusi, has been an injury concern, not selected for the preliminary squad, even though he is back to fitness or overcome his long-term injury there. Not selected even for the preliminary squad, Ahmed Kendusi. We do have a new candidate here. It is Cyril Katir. Cyril Katir just making the preliminary squad there. We're actually going to do something a bit unusual here. We have some candidates for left and right midfielders. We're going to introduce them before looking at the position here. So let's go to left midfielders. We have Faris Chaibi. We actually moved him to this position. He's coded as a left attacking midfielder, but we had put him here. Faris Chaibi was selected for the squad, for the final squad. And then for right midfielders, we had a couple of candidates here. The first one at the likely level, Hikam Boudawi, was selected for the final squad. But are seemingly off the squad, Sofiane Feghouli, a veteran for the team, only making the preliminary squad there, but had seemed to be off the squad. We do have a new candidate as a right midfielder as well, and it is Hatham Lusif. Hatham Lusif had been around for a while, but had not appeared over the past couple of years. So there, a long list of candidates. None at the definite level. Let's go back and look at the situation then, or our predictions. I'm I'm finding the spot here. Okay, so a very complex situation in the midfield, and that was the case going into the last cup as well as over the period we looked at after the cup until October 2024. In short, none of the candidates that we've mentioned here started more than half of the games. However, 6 of them started around a third of the games. So that is the situation. Players coming in and out, making it impossible for us to identify a starter. So that was our basically thought after part 1, starter unidentifiable there. 2 of them now were not selected for the squad, so that does reduce the field a bit. The main players then remaining would be Zaruki, Zorgain, Chaibi, and Boudaoui. Ironically, then, Ismail Benassa, who had only started 3 of the games, and attacking midfielder Ibrahim Maza started the first November friendly. While Ben Asser and Zaruki started the second. So in fairness, Ben Asser had been injured for half of the games over the period. So we would probably put him now first among many possible candidates. But really, he's the only name we can put up there as a potential starter because it's just players in and out of the midfield otherwise. And we're not sure which among the several candidates here would be the one. So we are going to put a single star beside Ben Asser and leave it at that. We'll have to really wait until the cup to see who fills out these positions. Okay, let's move up to the attacking end of the midfield. I just want to see if we have any African Cup players or sorry, Arab Cup players among these. I think we mentioned the only one, the newcomer defensive midfielder Victor Lecal, the only one among them. Okay, let's go to the left attacking position, and here we have a definite candidate in Mohamed Amoura. He was selected for the final squad, and likely candidate Saeed Benrahma. A bit of a story behind this. He was not selected for the final squad, and a bit of drama there. He was actually refused to play in the Arab Cup. So he seems to have a few incidents related to attitude, one of them refusing to play in the Arab Cup. He had also been involved in an online row with teammate Balali, which the manager found distasteful. And he had also been left out of the 2023 squad for similar attitude issues, that involving refusing to shake the previous manager's hand when he was subbed out of a game. So Benrahma left out there. He had been a likely candidate, but once again, as in 2023, not selected for the squad. Well, I just mentioned it online row with Yusuf Balali. He is our possible candidate here. He did not make the squad either. Maybe the row would have played some role in the decision, but actually injury is the reason that Yusuf Balali is not available for selection. And here we have a new candidate, and it is Adil Bulbina. Adil Bulbina was selected for the final squad, so we'll introduce him here. He was also selected for the Arab Cup, so one of 4 players who was selected for both tournaments. We're going to meet the last one shortly. Adil Bulbini has been with Algeria just since 2025. He has 4 caps and 3 goals. I think 2 of those goals coming in the Arab Cup there. No, 3 of those goals, because that was his first appearance for the national team, was in the Arab Cup. So he scored 3 of their 6 goals in that tournament. So I wonder if he was a selection prior to the Arab Cup, or whether he was brought in because of his success there. Bobina is 22 years old and plays for Al Duhai in Qatar. That's one of the biggest clubs there in Qatar, and was with clubs in Algeria prior to that. So Adil Bobina selected for the African Cup here. Let us look at the position, or let us look at our predictions here. So we had as possible starters at the end of part one, Saeed Benrahma and Mohamed Amoura. Mohamed Amoura also starts as a forward, but we considered him possible at this level. In our analysis of the last 2 years, it had been a bit chaotic at first, but roughly it settled into Benrahma playing when it was a left attacking midfield position, and Mohamed Amoura when it was a left forward position, as in a 4-3-3 formation. So Amoura definitely more of a forward there. Amoura played the first November friendly. But in the second, it was neither of these. It was central midfielder Hussein Aouar, who is now out injured. So Aouar injured and Benrahma not selected. So we have to consider Amoura the likely starter over here. So we're going to give Amoura 2 stars as the likely starter. Again, he may start as a forward as well. Our other prediction is an out of position player is also possible here. So we're going to put 1 star to out of position player, or the possibility of an out of position player starting over here. Having said that, Bobina may have a chance of being a starter. They'll probably put him on as a substitute, at least at first. And if he has the success here that he had in the Arab Cup, he may end up being the starter, especially if they go deeper into the tournament. Okay, let's go to the right attacking side of the midfield. Here we have a definite candidate in Riyad Mahrez, who was selected for the squad. And then we have 2 possible candidates. Both of them were selected. The first one is Anis Haj Musa, and the second one, Ilan Kabal. Both of those making the final cut. There are possible but unlikely candidate Badruddin Bouanani, just making the preliminary squad there. And we have 2 candidates added to the list from the preliminary roster, and neither of them made the final cut. The first one is Mohamed Bashir Baloumi, and the second one, Zinedine Ferhat. Both of those players have been around for a little while, but didn't make the list in part one because they haven't played recently. Okay, let's talk about the position there. Our starters, our prediction at the end of part one was Riyad Mahrez, but only as a likely starter. For one thing, he may also start as a forward. But the other thing too is he only started about 2/3 of the games in this position. So we're a bit reluctant to say that he would be the definite starter. However, there really is no clear candidate as a backup in this position. In the November games, it's central midfielder Ramiz Zerouki starting the first game, but we didn't see him in this position before, so we don't necessarily see him as a backup. It was Riyad Mahrez starting the second game, as we might expect. So we're going to leave things the way they are here. Riyad Mahrez as the likely starter. Again, we could put an out-of-position player as a possible starter, or else one of our possible candidates, Anis Haj Musa or Ilan Kabal, both of those new to the squad over this period, so they may get a chance. Okay, that is it. Let's move up to central attackers, central attacking midfielders. And here we have no definite or likely candidate. In fact, they only used the position about 1/3 of the time there. However, our possible candidate, Ibrahim Maza, was selected for the final squad. The seemingly off the squad Yassin Brahimi just making the preliminary squad, but he was used in the Arab Cup. In fact, he was the captain of the team for the Arab Cup, so seemed to have been, well, I would say earmarked for that. Probably that's the case, but he was on the preliminary squad here. All right, and we have three new candidates to introduce here. The first one, Himad Abdelli, just making the preliminary squad initially. However, he was the player recalled to the squad to replace the injured Aouar there. Sorry, I just want to make sure I have the name right. Houssem Aouar being withdrawn from the squad and then replaced by Himad Abdelli. And then we have, and I'm going to introduce him shortly, but I'll tell you first the other two players who just made the preliminary squad. That is Abdel Kahar Kadri and Charadine Bukolda. Both of those selected for the preliminary squad. Let's take a look at Himad Abdelli, though, because he made the squad. He has been with Algeria actually since 2003 and has 4 caps for the national team. He's 26 years old and plays. He's French-born and plays for Angers in France since 2022, and with Le Havre before that, with their youth club, their B team, and their senior team up until 2022. He was he was selected for the preliminary squad for the 2023 African Cup, but then didn't make the final cut there. Apparently, he's been playing well over the past little while, and there was a bit of an outcry when he wasn't named to the squad, to the final squad in the first place. But perhaps that pressure influenced his selection as the one to replace Aouar. So Himad Abdelli selected for the final squad. We have him in yellow highlights on the graphic there to show that he is a replacement there. Okay, let's talk about the position here. As I said, it was only used in a third of the game, so in about 6 games over the period. And our successful candidate, Ibrahim Maza here, only started one of those 6 games. So he's certainly, not the player who we would expect to play in the position. Actually, we did get a hint because the position was used in the 2nd November friendly. That was a 4-2-3-1 formation, which has an attacking midfield position. But once again, as in over the period, it was an out-of-position player. Anis Haj Musa, actually one of the right attacking midfielders who we just met. Anis Haj Musa filling the position in that November friendly. So, what are our predictions here? We think the same now as we thought before. We thought likely the position would not be used. And if the position was used as it was in the November game, we think it will be filled by an out-of-position player. There's a chance it could be Maza, but he's one among several candidates that might fill the position. All right, so that is our prediction for the central midfield. It doesn't sound very convincing, but that's what we think. Okay, let's move on to the forward end of the field. And here we're going to meet a few more African Cup players, Arab Cup players. Let's go to secondary striker. No, I've put players in the wrong position over here. Okay, let's go to forwards because we don't have any secondary strikers there. And the candidates are at the definite level. We have Amin Gouri. That was an injury concern. We think he would have been a definite candidate if he was fit, but it turns out he's not. and just made the preliminary squad, which indicates they were maybe hoping that he would find fitness there. The second or the next candidates are two at the likely level. The first one is Baghdad Buneja. Some may be surprised to find him just a likely candidate, but we explained why in part one we placed the players at these levels. Anyway, Baghdad Buneja was selected for the squad. The second one is a bit of a drama too. It's Yassine Benzia, and he didn't even make the preliminary squad. His non-selection for the preliminary squad was seen as a clear indication by the manager that he was intended for the Arab Cup. So he did play in the Arab Cup rather than the African Cup. But it's a bit weird, and this is why we wonder if there's a bit of drama behind it, because we've seen that many of the Arab Cup squad members were selected for both. I shouldn't say many. There were 4 players selected for both. What I meant was many of the players who were on the Arab Cup squad were named on the preliminary squad for the African Cup. So Benzia is a bit of an exception there, and I'm not sure I really found out the reason why. All I heard was that it was a clear kind of firewall or a clear indication that he was intended for one rather than the other. But then that begs the question as to why other players weren't in that position. Anyway, Yassine Benzia, not selected for the preliminary squad, but was on the Arab Cup squad there. Next, we have 2 seemingly off the squad players. Both of those were African Cup players here, but this is what I mean. Both of them were selected for the preliminary squad for this cup. That is Adam Unas and Islam Slimani, both named to the preliminary squad, but playing in the Arab Cup instead. Okay, so that doesn't leave us with much up here. We only have Baghdad Buneja, but we do have some new candidates to add to the squad, and in fact, 2 of them made the final cut. The first one is Monsef Bakra, and we will introduce these 2 players since they did make the cut. Monsef Bakrar, maybe I'm saying that wrong, Bakrar, and the other one is Redouane Burkane, also making the final squad. And he also made the Arab Cup squad. We'll talk about that when I introduce him. But first, I'll give you the names of the other 2 players making the preliminary squad. The first one is Amin Chiaka, and the second one, Ibrahim Amin. In fact, we couldn't find much information on him in terms of his position there. So a bit of an obscure player, but I put him on the list here just to have his name somewhere. Okay, let's look at the 2 candidates who made the squad. So the first one is Monsef Bakrar, and he is 26 years old, and he actually was called up. He maybe should have been on our list, but I'll tell you why he wasn't. He didn't start any of the 18 games over the period we looked at from March 2024 to October 2025, but he was subbed in for the first 4. And for that reason should have been on our list. However, he was not selected for the 14 others, and that's why we didn't put him on our list. However, he did return to sub into both of the November friendlies there prior to the tournament, and then was selected for the Arab Cup there as well. So he is one of 4 players selected for both. Again, which begs questions about Yassine Benzia being earmarked for the Arab Cup only. Anyway, there we have it. Monsef Bakrar with Algeria since 2023, actually, and 6 caps for the national team, but a bit of a surprise given that he was off the team for more than a year there. The other one is Redouane Burkane. Redouane Burkane got his first appearance for the national team, actually in the 2025 African National Championship. That was in the summer, kind of a B team tournament there, but then also played in the Arab Cup in December. Early December here. So since 2025, but he has 6 caps and 2 goals, and Burkane is 22 years old. I also wonder if he was brought up because he performed well in the African Cup there. Anyway, he plays for Al Wakra in Qatar. Since 2025, and was with clubs in Algeria. The bigger clubs, though, JS Kabylie and Paradou AC in Algeria there. So Redouane Burkane on the roster here. And that leaves us with 3 forwards, which is still kind of thin. Let's look at the predictions then. We had at the end of part 1 Baghdad Bouneja as a likely starter. That really wasn't based on his participation, but more on his reputation. We'll talk about that. For possible starters, we have left attack or we've moved him to left attacking midfielder, Mohamed Amoura, but he is coded as a forward, actually. And we thought Riyad Mahrez might start here, and Amin Ghouri was also a possible starter. However, he was not selected for the squad. They had used a 2-man forward line about half the time over the period, and Baghdad Bouneja had only started 8 of the 18 games, and only 2 of their games in 2025. But that was kind of the situation going into the last cup as well, that he hadn't actually played in that many of the build-up games, but was the starter in that cup. We think that might be the same situation here. And the friendlies in November kind of suggested he started as the lone forward in both of those games. And so that kind of justifies or retrofits our positioning him as a likely starter. Actually, we're a bit tempted to move him up to being a definite starter. But the fact is that sometimes he just simply doesn't start. So we're going to keep Baghdad Bouneja as a likely starter. We'll give him 2 stars there. And for possible starters, I won't move their names up here, but we think Mohamed Amoura and Riyad Mahrez are also possible starters. It's also possible that it would be a 2-man forward line there. Okay, that is it for forwards, and it brings us to the end of section 2. And so we're going to move into section 3 here, and we're going to welcome listeners to the short version of the mediacast here. We're going to begin with our spotlight review. That's a race through the squad, reviewing what we've covered, basically what we've covered throughout the periods. In part 1, we introduced the candidates and put them according to their likelihood of making the final squad. And then in part 2, we saw who made the final squad and the preliminary squad, and we predicted the starters as best we could. So that's what we're doing. I don't know in the short version if we'll have time to look at the surprise selections and non-selections, and certainly not time for the massive injury list that we have to look at here. Anyway, let's do the spotlight review. We begin with manager Vladimir Petkovic, and we'll consider him a successful selection. He'll be leading them through the tournament. Next, goalkeepers. We have a definite candidate in Alexis Guendouzi. However, he was selected only for the preliminary squad there. That was due to injury. Our likely candidate, Oussama Bambout, was selected, and 2 of our 4 possible candidates were selected. Anthony Mandrea and Luka Zidane, both of those making the final cut. But the other 2, Alexander Ukija and Zakaria Abulhafaya, neither of those even making the preliminary squad. In the case of Ukija, that was an injury involved in that, and we'll talk about that soon. but there we have it. Players below the possible level, we're not going to mention unless they made the final squad. But if you are using the YouTube feed for this, you can see their names written there. In terms of predictions here, we thought it would be Alexis Guendouzi after he was out. We gave an equal chance to Anthony Mandrea, who was the starter in the last cup, and Oussama Ben Bout there. Okay, for central defenders, we had two definite candidates, Aissa Mandi and Rami Bensebaini, both of those selected for the final squad. Likely candidate Mohamed Amin Tougai, also selected for the final squad, and one of four players who was selected both for this tournament and for the Arab Cup. Here we had four possible candidates as well. The first one, Mohamed Amin Madani, not even making the preliminary squad there. The third one, Ahmed Touba, made the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. But the other two made the squad, the final cut here, and that is Zinedine Balaid and Samir Chergui. Predictions were made a bit difficult here by Bensebaini and Tougai being injured for the November friendlies. Ultimately, we think that Aissa Mandi is a definite starter, but who his partner or partners will be, because they sometimes use a three-man defence, we're not sure. So we're just giving a possible level to Bensebaini, Tougai, Balaid, and Chergui, all of them. So yeah, we're really not sure who will partner Mandy. Okay, over to the left back position. We had no candidate at the definite level. Some may be surprised that Ryan Aït-Nouri was only at the likely level. Again, you'd have to go back to part one to see why. But Ryan Aït-Nouri was selected, as was the other candidate at the likely level, Zhao and Hajam. Both of those selected, and so was our possible candidate, Mehdi Dorval. So three left backs being brought to the cup here, and let's talk about the prediction. We think Ryan Aït-Nouri is the definite starter over here. Over to the right back position, again, no definite candidate here, but a likely candidate in Youssef Attal, and he was selected for the final squad. We had three possible candidates here. The first two only making the preliminary squad. That is Kevin Guitoun, also known as Kevin Vanden Kerkhoff, and Mohamed Farsi, also just making the preliminary squad. But our possible candidate, Rafik Belgali, was selected for the final squad there. In terms of starters, I should mention that Youssef Attal, the second of four players selected for both the Arab Cup and this Cup. Youssef Attal, though, we only give a possible level of being the starter here, and then we give possible as well to Rafik Belgali, and we give possible to a central defender stepping in there, either Aissa Mandi or the newcomer, where is he? Samir Chergui, we think could be a starter over there. Let's go up to the midfield. This was really a bit of a mess in terms of predicting starters. We had no candidates actually coded as defensive midfielder. But we did have a new candidate coming in, Victor Leclau. He didn't make the final cut, the preliminary squad. I only mentioned him because he was selected for the Arab Cup there. So all of our candidates are central midfielders or else left and right midfielders here. So none at the definite level. At the likely level, we had Nabil Bentaleb. He was not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad there. We have five possible candidates, and actually four of them were selected for the final squad. The first one, Ramiz Zarouki, and then Adam Zorgain, and Ismail Benasser, all of those on the final squad. The other one, Husam Awar, was selected for the final squad, but a late injury saw him withdrawn from the squad. We're going to see him replaced by an attacking midfielder as we go upfield there. And then we had a fifth possible candidate, Ahmed Kendusi, not selected even for the preliminary squad there. Let's go on before we talk about predictions to the left and right midfielders. So we had a likely candidate as a left midfielder in Fares Chaibi. He was selected for the final squad. And we had a right midfielder at the likely level, Hikam Boudawi. Hikam Boudawi selected for the final squad as well. Now we can talk about predictions, but very difficult to make predictions up here. Ultimately, we just chose one candidate as a possible. You'd have to listen to the section 2 to see how we worked all that out. But just Ismail Benassa we consider a possible candidate. Otherwise, it could be any of them. That's our conclusion in the midfield. A bit unsatisfying, but there we have it. Let's move on upfield to the attacking end. For left attackers, we have a definite candidate in Mohamed Amora, and he was selected for the final squad. However, our likely candidate, Saeed Benrahma, not selected even for the preliminary squad. He was selected for the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. A bit of drama that we talked about in section 2 there. We also have a new candidate coming in. It's Adil Bulbina. Adil Bulbina is the third candidate making both the Arab Cup squad and this squad. He was selected. And in terms of predictions here, we think it's likely Mohamed Amora will be the starter over here, but it's also possible that it could be an out-of-position player starting over here. We didn't really consider Adil Bulbina as a starter, especially in the first game, but we think he actually might get a starting position at some point. Let's go to the right attack. Definite candidate, Riyad Mahrez, was selected for the final squad, as were our two possible candidates, Anis Haj Musa and Ilan Kebal. Both of those selected. And in terms of starters, we think Riyad Mahrez is a likely starter. We also think he's a possible starter at forward. And so we would almost say a definite starter, 98% kind of thing, Riyad Mahrez. Okay, let us go. He's the captain of the team, by the way. Let's go to central attackers here. And they only used this position in about a third of their games. For candidates, we have at the possible level Ibrahim Maza. He was selected for the final squad. And one of our three new candidates here, Himad Abdelli, initially just making the preliminary squad, but he is the player who was brought in for the injured Husam Aouar. So Himad Abdelli, new to the squad and making the final team in the end. In terms of predictions over here, we think it's likely that the position won't be used. But if it is used, we think it's more possible that an out-of-position player will be used than any of the players we've mentioned here. Moving on to the forwards, we had a definite candidate in Amin Ghouri. However, he was not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad there. That due to injury. They're really injury-ridden. Algeria here. So Amin Ghouri out. Our likely candidate, Baghdad Buneja, was selected for the final squad. However, the other one, Yassine Benzia, in a bit of a curious situation, not selected even for the preliminary squad, but playing in the Arab Cup there. I should also say that our two seemingly off-the-squad players here, who just made the preliminary squad, were also selected for the Arab Cup. That's Adam Unas and Islam Slimani. And I should have mentioned in attacking midfielders too that our seemingly off-the-squad candidate Yassine Brahimi, though just on the preliminary squad, for this cup is actually the captain of the team for the Arab Cup, Yassin Brahimi. So some of those veterans, especially in the forward lines, being used in the Arab Cup. In terms of our business here, let's go back. We got sidetracked a little bit there because we had two new candidates to introduce as forwards. The first one is Monsef Bakrer, and the other one, Redouan Burkane. Both of those making the final squad. Burkane also appearing in the African or in the Arab Cup there. So yes, he's the fourth of four players selected for both squads. In terms of starters, we think ultimately Baghdad Tunisia will be the starter, just as he was going into the last cup. He didn't look, he didn't look like he had enough participation to be a starter. Ended up starting all games. The same thing is true here. His participation over the period, he started less than half of the games, but we think he'll be the starter here. Otherwise, we think actually more likely than either of the new candidates would be left attacking midfielder. Left attacking midfielder. He is a forward, though. We had moved him to left attacking midfield, Mohamed Amoura. So we think he could be a starter. It could be a two-man forward line, or Riyad Mahrez, also a possible starter as a forward. Okay, that is the end of our spotlight review, and we move on to our next order of business, the surprises. So notable non-selections is first. Most of them are due to injury, like our goalkeeper Alexis Guendouzi. We had considered him a definite candidate, and he was on the preliminary squad, but we'll revisit him in the injury section to see why. Next, we have left attacking midfielder Saeed Benrahma. We talked about kind of attitude problems, ultimately getting the best of him and not selected for the final squad. We detailed them in part two. We have central midfielder Nabil Bentaleb. Also a likely candidate, just as Benrahma was, but not making the final cut there. And finally, we have Yacine Benzia, a bit of an odd situation where he was not selected even for the preliminary squad because he was earmarked for the African Cup. But we wondered why other players weren't treated the same way, because a lot of them were on the preliminary squad or even were in the Arab Cup and played both. So anyway, Yacine Benzia had been a likely candidate but didn't even make the preliminary squad. That's the long and short of it. Our only surprise inclusion here, and he would also fit in the new player category, but we'll add him here, is Himad Abdelli. He was brought in to replace the injured Houssem Aouar. So he had been a new candidate, actually not brand new, with the team since 2023. So in a sense brought in from the cold there to replace. We have three new players. The first one, the left attacking midfielder Adil Boulbina, selected for the final squad. Then we have forward Monsef Bakrar, also selected, and Redouan Burkane, also selected for the final squad. Now, two of these new players were also in the Arab Cup, so we speculated whether they were brought up because they performed well in that Arab Cup, but we're not sure. They might have been selected beforehand. Those two, by the way, are Boulbina and Burkane. There. Okay, now we get to the long injury situation part. So look at this if you're looking at the YouTube, the list that we ended with in part one. And we have, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11 players on that field. I think we'll dispense quickly, though, with Rami Ben Sabeni and Yusuf Atal, because we knew at the end of part one that both of those were recovered from injury. And so we can kind of skip those. But we will note in the revised injury list that they were both selected for the final squad. Next, let's go in the order of position here. We have goalkeeper Alexis Guendouzi. At the end of part one, we saw he was out with a calf injury since very recently. That was December 8th. He got injured in a club game with an unknown return date, and basically that has not changed, and it precluded his selection. So we're going to say dropped due to injury. Alexis Guendouzi had been on the preliminary squad there. Next, we have goalkeeper Ukija, and he was not selected for the preliminary squad even. He was out with a cruciate ligament injury tear since August of 2025 and an unknown return date, and that remains the same. But in his case, he was just a possible candidate, so we're going to put him in the injured but was not a strong candidate category. Next, we look at the central defenders. Sorry, I'm just finding my spots here. Well, let's go to the right back, Kevin Guiton or Kevin Vandenkerkhoff. He was out with an unknown injury since late November and an unknown return date. He did play 22 minutes as a substitute for his club on December 19th, but he had been on the injury list up until that point. So even though he recovered at the end there, we think the injury still may have played a role in the decision. His situation may have been unknown when the squad was actually selected. So he did make the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. But again, just a possible candidate. So we put him as a injured but not a strong candidate. We're not really sure what role the injury played in his decision, the decision that he was not selected. Okay, next we have central defender Samir Churgi. He was out with a hamstring injury since late November and an unknown return date. He was on the injury list even up till December 13th, which was after the squad was selected, but was off the injury list by the time of the Cup. So, of course, they're monitoring these situations and decided that he was recovered enough to be named to the final squad there. So Samir Churgi recovered. We'll put him in the recovered. Next, we have left back Ryan Ait-Nouri. He was out with an ankle injury for the last 4 games there in the fall of 2025, but he was off the injured list in early November. We were still concerned, though, because he had only played 1 minute for his club and otherwise had been on the bench, so we were not sure of his fitness at the end of part 1. But even though he seemed to be recovered, he was on the bench for 7 matches for his club, and in the first and last of those, he was subbed in for 1 minute. Anyway, 7 games, that made us sure that he was recovered and just not being selected for his club. And in fact, he did start in both of Morocco's November games there. So we are putting Ait-Nouri in the recovered category while he was selected. So that's maybe evidence enough. Okay, let's see. Also, central defender Mohamed Amin Tougai. He was out with muscle problems since before the October internationals and had an unknown return date. At the end of part 1, we saw he was no longer on the injury list, but he hadn't played for his club, so he was still a concern for us. However, he had recovered from his problems. He was selected for the Arab Cup in early December there, and So Mohamed Amin Tugay also recovers. So this is actually going quite well for Algeria on the whole, even though there are a few players there losing to injuries. Let's talk about a couple of central midfielders, or at least one, Hussein Aouar, and he's actually a new injury, so we'll put him there. He was not an injury concern in part one, but he aggravated an already existing groin problem in training with the national team prior to the tournament. So he was withdrawn from the squad, and as we saw in earlier, replaced by Himad Abdelli. So a new injury, but dropped due to injury is the ultimate outcome for him. We still have more. We have left attacking midfielder Youssef Belaili. He was out with a cruciate ligament tear from late November and an unknown return date. That situation did not change, so he was not selected. But we're not sure if he would have been. First of all, he was only a possible candidate. And second of all, there was a bit of controversy about some online thing that I won't get into, an online row. But again, we're not sure how much each of those factors played in his non-selection. But anyway, the injury precluded it. We also have left attacking midfielder Amin Ghouri. I think we moved him to the forward line. Anyway, he was out with a shoulder injury from late October 2025, and even in part one, we knew he was not expected back until January 2026. So we have to put him in the dropped due to injury section as well. That's Amin Ghouri, who, yes, we had moved him to the forward line. A couple of less likely candidates, both at the possible level, actually. The first one, Mohamed Farsi. We have a bit of fondness for him because he's connected with Canada here. Mohamed Farsi out with a pelvis injury since mid-July 2025 and an unknown return date. That situation remains the same. Again, we're not sure how seriously he would have been under consideration. We'll put him in the injured but not a strong candidate category. He was just at the possible level. Finally, we have central midfielder Ahmed Kandouzi out with a fractured lower leg since early May, but he did return to play for his club on November 25th and has 2 bench appearances and 1 substitute appearance of 15 minutes. So now, by now, he's subbed in for 2 of 6 games for his club, on the bench for 4 others, but probably a long recovery time there. And Ahmed Kandouzi, again, we're not really sure how much the injury played into his selection there, but he wasn't selected even for the preliminary squad there. And yeah, a bit uncertain about that. We finally reached the end of the injury section. I've been nervous about that because I'm not sure I've ever seen such a long one. Okay, well, we're going to skip closing thoughts here in the interest of keeping this a bit shorter. So let's move to our closing here, our closing graphic, and say, well, we hope that information was useful to you. We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this mediacast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.